Just a quick note that in this episode, we talk about rating and ranking a wide range of people who might be attending this year's U.S. Nationals. If you might be one of those people and don't need that kind of extra pressure in your life, you may want to check out a different episode of Peace Talks. It's time for the Peace Talks Guide to U.S. Nationals. I'm your host and speed puzzler wannabe, Rob Shields. And with me in the virtual studio is returning guest host and speed puzzler extraordinaire, EB Caron. EB, welcome back to Peace Talks.
Thanks, Rob. It's always great to be here.
Brought my high energy intro for this. I'm extremely excited.
People can't see it, but I'm going to do my thumbnail face.
People will just have to guess what that looked like. All right, so we're going to get deep into the weeds about who we think that you ought to pay attention to at the U.S. Nationals coming up here in April. We'll give you a little bit of background on the event itself. We'll talk a little bit about how we came to having people on our list of stuff to talk about. And then we're just going to dive deep into a bunch of people that we think that you should be looking for. I did a bunch of number crunching. EB, you did a bunch of intel gathering. So I think we haven't shared our lists with each other. So it will be fun to just sort of go back and forth and see who we have to talk about. We're not necessarily going to go in depth on a lot of people we've talked about in the past. So if you want to learn more about some folks, and we'll point them all out along the way if we don't go into depth about them. There are previous episodes, including last year's Who to Watch at Worlds guide, and some folks have their own individual episodes. So there's more to be found. Anything else to say before we get started, EB?
No, I've been gathering information from some lesser known puzzlers so that I can share some fun and moving puzzling origin stories.
Awesome. I am so looking forward to that. Let's talk about the event itself.
The USA JPA wasn't originally planning to have this event because of the heavy lift that nationals, with the big convention is. They were planning to skip this year and only have nationals in 2026. So this event will look a little different because it's added on to AwesomeCon, which is a larger convention happening in DC.
Yeah, my understanding is that Ravensburger came to them with an opportunity to take the competition portion and add it to an existing convention, and taking that pressure off allowed them to sneak in a competition this year, which I think is great. I think that there's plenty of appetite for a competition, shown by the fact that they doubled the venue size, the amount of people who can compete, and it is still sold out. So there was not a problem finding people who wanted to compete again this year.
Yeah, most of the heavy hitting Americans are signed up. There are a few who won't be there, but most will be there.
And then interestingly, we'll be back to the convention plus competition hosted by the USA Jigsaw Puzzle Association next year and continuing in even years. But it's not going to be in San Diego next year. So
right.
They're not going to announce it until spring, I am told.
Everyone knows this, Rob.
Oh, man.
No, right, I'm sorry. Not everyone, but I feel like I think I got a confirmation at the marathon 2 weeks ago. It's going to be in Atlanta.
And how did you hear that? How do you know this?
Well, it's been a rumor for a long time. Basically, It's been being considered since last nationals. Like I was starting to hear about it then.
Yeah, it does sound familiar.
USA JPA board member Faith Taylor lives in Atlanta. They wanted to have it be a location where someone was local due to puzzle shipping, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have it confirmed at the Puzzle Marathon in LA a couple weeks ago.
And then my understanding is that after next year, the goal is to continue to have it in different places.
I think that'll be good. I think that was what people were wanting.
Eventually, it'd be nice to have Worlds do a similar thing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how the competition actually works for the individual heats, groups, rounds. So there's individuals, there's pairs, and there's teams. I'm just going to talk through these real quick, and then EB, you can chime in with anything at the end of this. Individuals, there are 3 preliminary rounds of 200 individuals each. Each person is going to share a table. and that continues all the way up through finals. From each of those 3 rounds, 66 people will move on, where 200 people will be in the finals. So if you're following along with the math, that means that there's a couple of spaces open. The person who was first place last year is guaranteed to move forward, as is the person who I think holds the Jigsaw Puzzle Association rating. The highest score for that, I think, also moves forward. And folks have an hour and 30 minutes in the prelims to finish their 500 piece puzzle, and in the finals, the same amount of time for the same amount of pieces. All right, moving on to pairs. Pairs a similar setup. There will be 2 preliminary rounds of 200 people each. Every pair is going to be sharing a table all the way through the finals. In the preliminary round, it's a 500 piece puzzle from which 100 people will move on, and you have an hour and 15 minutes to finish it. In the finals, change up from last year, it is also a 500 piece puzzle. There are 200 people will ultimately be competing, and you have an hour and 30 minutes. So one of the interesting head scratchers, and maybe a sign of what they're looking to do at the final rounds, is that you have more time for the same piece count in finals.
Could be a tough one.
And then in teams, there are 2 rounds of 100 teams each. Teams get their own table, and they're competing with 2 1,000 piece puzzles, and 50 people from each of the prelims moves on with a 3-hour time limit for those. And then into the finals, 100 teams, again, 2 1,000 piece puzzles, 3 hours. And I should mention that all of these puzzles, even all the way through, all the way back to the individual prelims, are new unreleased puzzles.
One interesting thing is that I do think they've switched up the order of events this year. I forget how it was ordered, but one puzzler that I was talking with recently said that she had been burnt out by the team final and felt like she didn't give it her all in the individual final, and she has like unfinished business, I guess, in the individual final.
Do you think that the new arrangement makes that better?
Well, it's interesting. So the pairs final is after the team's prelims on Saturday. And on Sunday, it starts with the individual final and then ends with the team final. So it seems like the order is flipped.
As a spectator, I'm both split on the pairs or the individuals last or the teams last. Both of those are like fun to
Mm,
watch sort of competitions, and
yeah,
so I
yeah.
sort of think that teams is maybe the most sort of boisterous note to end on. Like there's a lot more
Mm,
chaos going on, a lot of people in
mm-hmm,
there sort of making things happen. But
yeah.
I also feel like the individuals is in a way the sort of pinnacle of the event, right? It's like everybody is in there, they're doing their best job, and you're seeing who the world's best person is in the whole thing.
I think having the team final is a good way of making sure a good number of people stick around until the end for the closing ceremony.
And you can watch these streamed live on YouTube and Twitch, both at the USA Jigsaw, at USA Jigsaw in both places, if you want to see it. And if you want any more information about any of this, there's a good amount of information at usajigsaw.org. Let's talk about why people made our list. So I'll go first because, as you can probably imagine, it's numbery and fiddly. I'll try and summarize it fairly quickly. But the way I approached this was to rank everyone using 3 components. First part was the USA Jigsaw Puzzle Association rating, otherwise known as JPAR, which is actually, I've gotten to know it a little better. It's a pretty clever algorithm developed by Guinness Book record holder Tammy McLeod, and it gives a score to every JPA member that has competed in a sanctioned event. The second part that I'm using is a more holistic scoring that I'm developed so that we're looking at all competitions internationally where an individual competed in a 500 piece competition. It's the same general approach as the JPAR, obviously includes a lot more events, but I also weight things on whether the event was in person or not, whether it was an unreleased puzzle or
Ooh.
not, and whether the event was sanctioned or not.
So now you're including virtual competitions, which you hadn't before.
That's right. So virtual competitions,
Mm.
but they get weighted down if they're not in person. If it is a released puzzle, it gets weighted down because that has become fairly contentious this last year with virtual competitions and people being able to guess puzzles. And you and I talked about this in both the precursor and the follow up on Worlds. People are doing a better job of guessing puzzles that exist, and if the event wasn't sanctioned, then decreasing it a bit as well. So doing some sort of nudging to try and make it so that the things that we think are high quality count more and the things that may be less quality count less.
Yeah, but still capturing some people who may not have ever competed in a live competition or in-person competition before.
Yeah, and in fact, like I said, we haven't shared our lists of people. I'm hoping to surprise you by a person or two who has never competed in any actual live event. But there are people out there who have tens of virtual competitions over the last year, and so they're in a way they're really well sort of practiced at the idea of completing a puzzle. Now, whether they can do that in person, a whole different story, which is part of the reason that virtual competitions get weighted down. But then the last part of my three-pronged approach is to use the average time that it took a person to complete a puzzle over the course of the year. So their average 500 piece individual time. So those are the three things that factor into that. Some quick notes about the data. It's through the last weekend in February. I know that there's a new JPAR set of scores to be released anytime now. So by the time you heard this, it's probably released, and it may cause things to be different. But in general, we're looking for people to talk about and not necessarily to be like, this person, in fact, will be this place kind of thing. You must have at least 2 competition scores for my stuff. So in the last 12 months. So in order for you to appear in my scoring, you have to have been somewhere. So there are folks, perhaps teammates of folks that who are on this call, who have fallen off of my rating
Mm,
system because they haven't done any competitions in the last year. And there are actually a number of people who don't have a rank coming in because they're new to puzzling in general. And just to give you a sense of scale, this year, the last 12 months, I have 197 competitions factored into my scoring. Last year, for the same amount of time, I only have 90, and there's the same amount of
hmm,
looking. So the number of competitions that are out there has increased pretty substantially over the last year. And just as a fun stat, my ratings include everybody who has competed anywhere in the world, not just in the US, and I have 5,926 competitors currently rated in my system.
nice.
So that's how I came about it. EB, how'd you come about your list?
Some sleuthing and talking to people, asking nosy questions, putting a tip line into my Instagram
I
stories.
love that. One of the things that makes this so fun for me is that we have just very different ways of approaching this problem, which I think hopefully will give folks a more comprehensive view of people to look out for. With that, you want to jump into the individuals?
Sure.
Just real quick, stats rundown. There were 588 registered competitors as of the end of February. 196 of those don't have scores for me in the last 12 months. 328 of them do. So those will be the people I'll be looking at. And we said we would look at the top 20 folks. We each developed a list of the top 20. And we're just going to go back and forth and sort of spring people on each other in whatever order we decide.
So, for example, first on my list is Connor DeLatt, who cannot compete in the individual because he's only 11.
Right. Connor, the young phenom who has no JPAR score, for example, because he's too young to compete in JPAR events, the cutoff being 16 years.
Oh, yeah. So he's not on your list. Oh, wait. No, he probably still is on your list.
He's on my list. He's 6th on my list. Actually, he's 5.5 on my list because
Hmm.
he can't compete in individuals. So we can't talk
Mm.
about him in the context of individuals, really. But he can compete in pairs and teams as long as there is at least one person over 16 on the pair and the team. So he shows up in my conversation there where he sort of slots in between the number 5 and number 6 individual pick on my list, which gives you a sense, which is why you're bringing him up, of just how strong a competitor an 11-year-old boy is.
Everyone was talking about him a couple weekends ago after he finished a speedpuzzling.com virtual competition, a 500 piece Ravensburger puzzle. Many people PR'd on this puzzle, so it's
Mm-hmm.
a very fast puzzle with Disney squares, but he completed it in 2250.
Yeah.
It wasn't his first time doing the puzzle. I think it was his third time, but his mom Kimberly said that his first time he did complete it in 2730. So still super fast.
So I watched him do side by side at St. Paul with Kyle Cosson. They were just sort of competing casually together. and Connor just destroyed Kyle. Now, I think it may have been Connor's many time attempts at that puzzle and maybe Kyle's first attempt at that puzzle. So I was a little unclear as to how much weight to give his finishing of that. But everywhere I have seen him compete has indicated that he has got significant horsepower.
Yeah, Connor's mom said that going to Winter Carnival after Jonathan Clough invited Connor to be on his team was the highlight of Connor's puzzling career so
I'll
far.
bet. Everybody was fawning over him, including myself. I talked to him and his mom for a little while, and just to kind of get a sense of them. And apparently, he's obsessed with puzzling. He comes home and he puzzles for at least an hour after school, and like that is the thing that he enjoys doing. So he's had lots of practice. He's clearly very capable. It will be interesting to see how he does. But again, not available for competing at the individual level.
Yeah, his mom says that when he grows up, he either wants to be a professional puzzler or an NBA player.
Well, good luck on both of those. One is hard, and the other, even if he is the best in the world, I'm not sure is yet to the level of making a living. But he's 11. By the time he actually cares to make a living, maybe that will be different. Maybe there'll be heavily sponsored, highly competitive jigsaw puzzling competitions where you can make millions of dollars by winning first place.
When people talk about Connor, one of the things they tell me that they want to know is whether he has a photographic memory.
Mm.
So I asked his mom about that, and she says, we've talked about it a lot, and she still goes back and forth.
Oh, interesting.
She did say that if they find a puzzle piece under a rug or like on the floor somewhere, no matter how long it's been, he can tell her exactly what puzzle it goes to.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about Connor a little bit once it comes to the pairs and team side of things, because those are places he can compete in. All right. Well, I'm going with the person who I think is number one and is not particularly surprising, but that would be Alice Rowe. Alice Rowe hit the top of my
Ooh,
list.
nice.
She hasn't competed in a ton of things. I only have 6 events for her over the last year, but she's competed in some of the hardest things there are out there. I actually have a difficulty score for everybody as well, and she's ranked number 2 for all people coming into the U.S. competition in terms of the difficulty of the path to get there. So the fact that
Mhm.
she's ranked number 2 means that she's doing really well in some of the hardest events there are out there. So last year's
Mm.
champ, her only scores after that were she finished first in the Colorado State competition, 24th in the Worlds. She showed up at Winter Carnival this year, but didn't compete in the individuals. So she doesn't have a score there. So I think it is sort of not surprising that returning champion from last year, Alice, would be on the list.
All right. Well, Alice was my number two, and I did get to see her a couple weekends ago at the Puzzle Marathon. And some updates from her. She's starting to get college acceptances and stress about making a decision. So
How old is she?
she's 18, she's a
18.
senior.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she, I think, is wrapping up her final season of playing basketball ever. But, thank goodness she has competitive puzzling to stick with for an entire lifetime. Yeah, so she's thinking that at the time of nationals, she will be stressing about her college decision.
Wow. Another layer of things to have to worry about.
So for my number one, though, I had Kelly Walter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kelly Walter, not a surprise. What made you choose her?
She came in fourth at Worlds.
She did, yeah. She finished 5th last year at nationals, like you said, 4th at Worlds, which is 11 positions higher than the next U.S. competitor, which is, I think, saying a lot. She also showed up at Winter Carnival, but didn't compete in the solo event. So your and my number 1 and 2 picks showed up in a place where they could really show what they were made of, and opted out, which I think they chose to do the family event instead, which I think is sort of adorable. The things they did compete in, I think they did teams and pairs. They blew everybody else out of the water. So there's definitely a lot of power between the two of them. Kelly's competed in 14 events, so she's a little bit more out there and around. Yeah, and what the last thing I guess is that amused me is the team name that they had, Alice and Kelly, along with Becca Taylor and Sammy Brownlow at St. Paul Winter Carnival, was Puzzle at the Disco, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
Updates from Kelly, who was on my team, the winning team, at the Puzzle Marathon a couple weekends ago. So she is just starting her third year of med school. And so she is starting to actually like be in the hospital, and she will be wrapping up her first rotation in pediatrics, I think like the Friday national starts.
I can just barely puzzle poorly, much less really well, and also work on becoming a doctor. Some of these folks are amazing on multiple fronts. I'm going to go with who I have in the number 3 place.
Awesome.
That would be Lauren Cutts.
Ooh.
So she was third at last year's nationals, finished 22nd at Worlds. She took first place at Winter Carnival, has the fastest 500 time of this group, and has competed in 21 events over the last year. So she's been doing really well. Not surprisingly, she's always been a strong contender. So I have her at third. I sat at Winter Carnival. I sat with her husband and a roommate of theirs and chatted with them the whole time. And if I were you, I would come away with a lot of interesting tidbits. But all I came away with is that she's actually really nice and everybody supports her a ton. And everything else fell out of my brain as soon as I stood up and walked away. So
Yeah, I know that she's helping. She helps out with a lot of Sarah Does
that's
Puzzles
right.
competitions. And her roommate, who is her pairs partner for now the speedpuzzling.com competition, Samantha will be pairing with Sarah's mom, Lisa, also two of my teammates at the Puzzle Marathon. um,
How many teammates did you have?
7 is a
7.
team of 8.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I asked Mari kind of for updates, and she said that she is on the road for like a full month, touring as a musician during doing multiple performances a day, and she gets back to Boston at like 1 a.m. on either Thursday morning or Friday morning, and then drives down to DC. So
Wow.
she is worried about how lack of sleep and that schedule is going to impact her performance.
Yeah, that seems like a good thing to worry about. Mari Black is a member of Wicked Quick, which is a fixture on the team stage. She competes a ton. She had 50 events over this last year, including quite a few of the European Jigsaw Jam. Only Jonathan Clough, who owns speedpuzzling.com, has more competitions across the entire globe. So she is the second most competing person. She was 16th last year and 41st at Worlds this year.
Yeah, she's really been dominating the speedpuzzling.com competitions lately. I think it's because many of the top puzzlers have stopped doing them. So, for example, Tiffany hasn't been doing them the past couple months. I think like many people didn't renew their groupies membership this year, and I think that has put Mari at the top quite a bit.
I can't remember if I mentioned this. She was 8th on my list. At number 4 is Kathy Reuter, former guest. Definitely go check out the episode with Kathy and her sister Jean. That is a fun episode. They are great people. Kathy was 8th at Nationals last year and 15th at Worlds. She was the third American. She's competed in 10 events that I was able to track. So that puts her at 4th place for me based on how she was doing.
And my number 4 was Andrea Peng, also former guest on Peace Talks. So actually your first guest on Peace
Yes.
Talks too.
And also, she's a great person who's hugely competitive. There's so much to like. She competed in 43 events this last year, so not too much farther back from Mari Black. So she's a constant competitor. She was 4th in nationals last year, 17th at Worlds as the 4th American. She's done 43 competitions that qualify for my list and a bunch more besides. Not everything that, like 300 piece competitions, for example, or 1,000 piece competitions, which she has historically liked to do, don't fall into my list. So she's done a ton of things. And she's also maybe the American who shows up most often in the European Jigsaw Jam virtual competitions, where some of the best in
Yeah,
the
I think
world
that's
compete,
true.
right?
Although Mari has really climbed up there
No,
too
you're right.
and has been doing those regularly.
100%. I think that Andrea actually might appear a little higher, except that she's competing against the best in the world fairly regularly.
Mm,
And that may
yeah.
ding her just a little bit in terms of how my score is computed.
Ah, interesting. Where is Andrea on your list?
She's number 5. She's right behind Kathy.
Oh,
So,
okay. So
yeah.
that's your number five.
Hmm.
My number five is Michaela Keener.
Okay. Talk more about Michaela.
Because she doesn't show up on your list,
She's
does
not on
she?
my list.
Yeah.
No. The last recorded competition I had for her was in 2023, where she placed 17th.
Mm.
But
Yeah, in
2023
the
is more
world.
than a year ago, so she fell off of out of my ranking system. But
Yeah.
welcome back,
Yeah.
Michaela. So another person who, if I recall correctly, is striving for great things and had to take a break from puzzle competitions because of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so Michaela was on my world's team, the Misfits, in 2023 when we placed second. And Michaela placed second in the pairs competition with Sarah Schuler that year. And as you mentioned, 17th in the solo competition. And since Worlds, Michaela has been busy finishing her PhD dissertation. So now she's Dr. Keener. She's gotten engaged and she's also bought a house in Kentucky. And I'll just give myself a pat on the back for snagging Michaela as my Paris partner. And I'll take a little bit of credit for getting her back. Sure.
Nice job. Well done.
Some fun facts about Michaela is that she is a rehabilitation scientist and a research professor whose research focuses on equestrians, specifically jockeys. She grew up riding horses, but is now allergic to horses. So instead, she studies people.
Wow, that is interesting and hilarious and sad all at the same time.
Another fun fact is that she has a daily goal of 10,000 steps, and she
Hmm.
has been keeping her streak up for 281 days in a row.
Go her. Next on my list at number 6, the first one that I think is truly like controversial and well, this will be fun to talk about is Matthew Netlow. Um,
Ooh.
so Matthew, as of this recording, is the number one person on the USA Jigsaw Puzzle Association rating. So
Wow.
he is the highest JPAR. It's sort of a numerical anomaly in that he did extremely well in a single competition, and so that kicked him up to the top. My scores are tempered a little bit more by the fact that he shows up in at least one other competition. So I have one more data point than JPAR considers, and I factor in how what his average time to complete was. So he's ranked currently 6th in my list, but I know that when the JPAR results came out at Winter Carnival, there were a bunch of people, maybe just me, who were whispering about who this person was who was suddenly at the top of the JPAR rankings. He did well in his only qualifying event, like I said.
Was that like the Southeast Regional Championship?
In the last 12 months, he has done the Southeast Regionals where he was first.
Right, by a lot. Like with a time of like 37 minutes.
Right. And my understanding it was a puzzle that he had done maybe even that day.
Right, he had done it a few times before.
Yeah.
I heard that
Uh,
too.
and then he did the USA Puzzle Club in January as well, where he
Mm.
finished 15th. So those are the two things that I have for him. He's done some other puzzle clubs, and he did the Southeast Regionals in 2023, where he was third. But those don't factor into my current ratings. So a bit of a wild card. I think it's interesting to have him in here because he's sort of a data anomaly, and it'll be really interesting to see how he does in sort of a bigger competition. Where we just get to see more data points for him. His difficulty ranking is 168th, which is substantially lower than most people in my top 20 lists, which means that his competitions weren't particularly hard relative to other competitions that are out there, like nationals and worlds and that sort of thing. So it will be interesting to see how he actually does.
Well, I think he's fast and he was on my radar.
And you
Yeah,
don't scour the JPAR rankings every time they come out.
I don't actually. I don't pay much attention to the JPAR ratings, but I do pay attention to the speedpuzzling.com competitions.
Yeah,
He was definitely discussed in a group chat that day when he won the Southeast Regional Championship by like 15 minutes. But let me tell you a little bit about Matt because I reached out to him because he is a lesser known puzzler and wanted to share some fun facts about him. So he previously competed in American Logic Puzzle and Sudoku Championships.
Hmm.
And his top finishes were 11th for logic puzzles in 2016 and 8th for Sudoku in 2017.
All right. So a puzzler on many fronts.
Now, his jigsaw puzzling origin story is kind of sad and sweet. So he said that jigsaw puzzling became his number one hobby in mid 2022 on a day when his dog was going for surgery and he
Mhm.
needed to keep his mind off things. The large stack of puzzles that he got from a thrift store that day worked so well that he decided to start doing them more for general mental health purposes.
Yeah, it's a not uncommon theme is jigsaw puzzling for mental
Yeah.
health reasons. It's good to see.
He said at first he didn't like speed puzzling because it made him feel so frantic that it wasn't fun, but it seemed like other people were having fun with it when he watched online events, so he kept trying.
Has he come to the point where it's actually fun, or is he good at it despite it?
I think it's growing on him. You'll have to ask him that, Rob. One last fun fact is that Matt has aphantasia, which means that he can't visualize things in his mind at all. So he can't
Mm.
like
Mm-hmm.
create
Mm-hmm.
visual images off the top of his head. So he said that he's developed mental verbal strategies to chunk and remember the puzzle image. But so he really struggles when the image is hard to describe in words.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting. That is fascinating. I want to hear more about that.
that's what I'm here for. All right. So Matt was six on your list. My six is Tiffany Medeiros. And yeah, we know Tiffany. Let's see, update on Tiffany. She's been hosting a lot of like Zoom puzzle togethers leading up to nationals with different themes, and really creating community online among the puzzlers. I went to a redemption puzzle together in the past week, and Tiffany wants to get like a camper van and drive around with her dog. That's Tiffany's life update. But for now, she's sticking with her job and apartment.
Tiffany was sixth at nationals last year and 66th at worlds. She has competed in 29 competitions over the last year, so a fair number.
All right, who's your number seven?
My number seven is Jean
Hmm.
Reuter, the other half of the Reuter sisters and former guest. They talk about who has bragging rights at any given time, and sorry to say to Jean, but Kathy still has bragging rights, at least according to my calculations. She was seventh at nationals last year, besting Kathy by one place. She was second at Portland Jigsaw Masters here in my hometown, right behind Kathy. 28th in Worlds, and second at the Winter Carnival. Sadly, no Kathy to compete against because Jean sort of made a last minute dash after saying that she wasn't going to go to Winter Carnival. Both of them saying they weren't going to go to Winter Carnival. A position opened up with some folks, and she, I think, literally flew out the day or the day after she was asked by a team if she'd be interested in coming out.
Oh,
So
fun.
FOMO got the better of her, and she traveled across the country to compete at Winter Carnival.
Yeah, I got to puzzle with Jean and Kathy a couple weekends ago at the marathon that I keep talking about. They are well aware that Kathy has the current superiority in their ongoing competition.
Yep.
And I guess a little fun story about them is that when we were planning our strategy for the marathon, they were like, we don't want to puzzle together. We want to puzzle with other people that we don't get to puzzle with all the time.
That makes sense. You know, I've heard a number of people say that marathons are a great way of spending time with people you don't normally get to talk to because you're just sort of there for, 12, 14, 24 hours. And so it would make a lot of sense that if you're used to puzzling with your sister, maybe you want to hang with some other folks
Yeah.
for a while.
Do you want to know my secret for getting the Reuters on my team, Rob?
Yes.
Lisa Schuler. They really wanted to puzzle with Lisa, Sarah's mom. So once they knew that Lisa was committed, they locked in.
I love that you're working strategies on multiple levels here. Who do you got next?
All right, number 7, Hannah Doyle.
She's 16th on my list. She's done a very small number of events, 2 that qualify for hitting my ranking. Of note, she was second in the California State Championship. That is the extent that I really have any numbers to talk about.
I got to meet Hannah. She was on the second place team at the marathon. So she said that she got back into puzzling after spending New Year's Eve 2024 doing a puzzle alone by herself. And specifically, it was Buffalo 1000 piece butterflies from the
Oh,
Vivid Color collection. She lives in the Bay Area, so she's gotten connected in with the big Bay Area puzzling community that has
mm-hmm.
local puzzle swaps and a Facebook group, and found out about speed puzzling that way. Another interesting fact is that she is a 4th-year electrical engineering and computer science graduate student who works
Neat.
on research related to optical tools to improve human vision.
Fascinating. See, all these people doing super interesting things.
Yes, and puzzling alone on New Year's.
All right, next on my list, we've already talked about Mari Black, but her teammate Emma Pan is at 9 on my
Hmm.
list on Wicked Quick. And not just as a teaser, not the last Wicked Quick person on my top 20 list.
Hmm.
She was 20th at Nationals, 19th at Worlds. She competes a fair amount. I've got her for 16 events over the course of the last year.
I got to see Emma at the marathon too, and she said that she has been cutting her own puzzles lately. That was her update. She'll be going to grad school next year, so she'll be going to, I think, Harvard Business School for an
Wow.
MBA.
I'm starting to feel like there will be signs at in a few years for the U.S. competitions that say you must be at least this smart and have this level of degree in order to compete.
Well, come on, there's still Connor. He's a 5th grader.
That's right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So there's still hope for me. That's good.
So I think I skipped number 8. 8 for me was Kathy Reuter, and 9 is
Hmm.
Lauren Kotz, and then 10 is Karen Nill.
So you picked her up as well. She ended up 15th on my list. How did she hit your radar?
Combing the speedpuzzling.com results. I specifically like to look for people who don't have a belt color next to their
Mm.
name. It's like
Hmm.
my way of seeing who to watch, because it means they've done less than 10 speedpuzzling.com competitions.
That's how you get a belt is by volume.
I think so. I think it's 10 solo. You have to have at least 10 solo.
Okay, I thought it had to do with performance as well.
It does. The performance translates into the color of your belt.
Hmm.
But like anyone who doesn't have a belt means they've competed in less than 10 competitions, at least
Got it.
solo competitions.
I only have online competitions for Karen, so this is one of those places where a person hasn't necessarily done in person. Let me say that differently. I think that I have her for the Florida State competition. I can't remember if that was in person or not. I think it
I
wasn't.
think it was
So she may have.
virtual, yeah.
Yeah. So there's some chance that something that I have on my list is actually an in person, especially if it was through speedpuzzling.com. But she placed first in the Florida State competition in the last 2 years. Competition wasn't particularly fierce,
No.
but she was far and away the fastest. She is 16th ranked in time overall across the 8 competitions that I have her for. So there's definitely something there.
Yeah, and actually a competition that isn't wasn't included in your calculations that happened last weekend was the in-person Georgia State Championship, which she did win also. So she has gotten a little bit of in-person competition under her belt and was able to handle it. And she was also at the 24-hour puzzle marathon.
It's a who's who of people at the 24-hour marathon.
Yeah, I knew I needed to meet her. And so I saw her name on a sheet, like a speed run sheet. So I was like, Karen Nell. And then I went around to every table being like, is Karen with a C on your team? Until I found her.
I love your drive to go just talk to all of the people.
I mean, we had this planned out, Rob.
It's
So
some research to do.
exactly. Let me tell you what I learned about Karen. She is a mom of 2 kids who lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and works as a vice president of a commercial moving company. So they like
Oh,
move
all right.
offices.
Next on my list at number 10 is Grayson Shannon.
Oh, good catch, Rob.
Thanks. Similar to Matthew, Grayson did well in the 2 competitions that I have recorded. So third at Massachusetts, second at Northeast Regionals. Not particularly competitive competitions. So I don't know quite how they'll sort of net out in a bigger competition, but did manage to beat 3/4 of Wicked Quick at the Massachusetts state competition, which is
Yep.
not nothing. And all
All
of
of
them at
Wicked Quick.
regionals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which suggests there's more than just luck going on here.
Right. Yeah. I forgot about them when I put my list together. So well done, Rob.
Woohoo!
They were on one of my like sub lists of true urban legends that I don't have any fun facts to share about.
All right. Well, I expect you to hunt down Grayson at nationals. We'll
Yes.
do a follow up on fun facts.
Yeah. That sounds good.
All right. Who do you have next?
Allie Arundel. And Allie will be my teammate at nationals.
Which means you must have some fun facts.
I have fun facts. Her puzzling origin story is that her earliest puzzling memory was creating a carpet for the floor of her bedroom out of laminated puzzles and feeling really cool when she had her friends come over and they got to see her puzzle carpet.
I mean, it does actually seem sort of cool. You're not
Ah.
convinced?
The way she told me about it, it was like she didn't realize that it wasn't cool or that like her friends like didn't think it was as cool as she thought it was. So Allie is very competitive. She was a 3-sport athlete in high school and played 2 years of college basketball before tearing both of her ACLs. She became a daily puzzler during the pandemic, but didn't compete in any speed puzzling competitions until April 2024.
So Allie has done, I think, 23 virtual competitions this last year, is currently ranked 51st on my list. So I do have some information about her, but not a lot of depth. She didn't show up in my top 20.
Interesting. Allie grew up in Idaho, but she's lived in Hawaii for the past 13 years. So I know she's planning to travel out pretty early to recover from the jet lag. Like I think she arrives Tuesday or something.
Next on my list is another Hannah,
Mhm.
and not the last one,
Mhm.
is Hannah Siegler.
Mhm. Yep.
She was 9th in nationals last year. Over the course of this last year, she's really been working up her scores. Like my rankings for her increase over the course of the year. So it seems like she's doing really well. Finished 4th at individuals in Carnival. Has done 26 events this last year. So seemed like a person to talk about.
Yeah. Someone that was on my radar who I asked nosy questions to. So Hannah's from Wisconsin, and she said that her grandma used to buy her 500 and 1,000 piece puzzles from Dollar General to keep her occupied for an afternoon when she was a
Out
kid.
of trouble.
Um, Funny story she told me was that she found speedpuzzling.com in 2020, but she thought it was fake.
It's a
Because
scam.
yeah, she thought it was fake because the first thing that you could purchase was watching a competition.
And she was like, why would anybody do that?
But she came back to it. So her first speedpuzzling.com competition was in 2023. She said she loves to paint, which has developed her understanding of color theory,
Hmm.
and really makes the patterns and textures in puzzles stand out more. And she fixes medical equipment for her job. So she's good with her hands and likes keeping her hands busy. And Hannah is pairing with Mari Black this year. So my 12 was Jean Reuter. My 13 is Sarah Schuler.
Any fun facts about Sarah? I mean, we have a pretty deep catalog of Sarah related information, both from the World's Guides and the episode that she did for Peace Talks. So we know a fair amount about Sarah. She's famously second at nationals last year, 56th at Worlds, but is one of those ones that I think you were referring to earlier that hasn't competed a lot since the start of 2024. I have her for 9 events over the course of the entire year, which for a person of the sort of level of competition that she is sort of surprisingly small. So she's 17th on my list presently.
My 14 is Hannah Sigler,
Mm-hmm.
15 Emma Pan,
Okay.
16 Kyle Cosson.
Kyle is 19th on my list. He was 10th at nationals last year, 65th at Worlds, and 16th at Carnival recently. He does a lot of online puzzling, but a lot of it through Twitch. He's done like 45 total competitions this last year, so he's definitely present in the online and well, in the entire jigsaw puzzling scene. Not surprisingly,
Yeah, I think he's getting faster still.
is that right?
Yeah,
The challenge I have is that I think everybody's getting faster.
right, right. So, I mean, last year he placed 10th at nationals, and I have him 16th on my list this year.
Right? Yeah. So you have him as 16th and I have him as 19th. So that really speaks to less a change in his capabilities, just a how there are new people emerging out in front, and how some people are just able to improve themselves substantially.
Yeah, I think also he's been at the top of some of the speedpuzzling.com competitions lately, which has stood out to me. However, as we talked about, a good number of the top puzzlers haven't been doing them lately.
Hmm.
Did we miss anyone you want to talk about in that range?
The next person on my list is at 13, Hannah Scott.
Mm-hmm. Good choice.
Hannah Scott, who was Pear's partner with previous guest Jessa Douglas, was 12th at nationals last year, has competed in 13 events during this last year, and like I said, puts her at 13 on my list.
My 17 is Nathan Bieberdorf.
Okay, Nathan is not on my list.
So Nathan is from Indiana. He came on my radar mostly through Instagram,
Hmm.
posting some pretty fast times on puzzles. So I did reach out to him to get a little background because I've never met him. He said that as a kid, he did a lot of impossible puzzles and
Hmm.
developed his own version of shape sorting. um, to tackle the challenge.
Interesting. Well, I need to know what that's all about now.
And he got into speed puzzling through a friend, Nick Ebelhack, who he knew through a local game group and book club. And so that's Nathan's pairs partner. They competed as a pair and a 4-person team at Gen Con in August. That was Nathan's first in person competition. They won both of those divisions. And so, yeah, he only started speed puzzling in July 2024 when Nick told him about speed puzzling.
So he is 54th on my list.
Hmm.
He's competed in 2 events that I was able to find. And he is ranked 41st based on his average 500 piece completion time. So definitely speedy, not top 20 according to the stats that I'm using.
One fun fact about him is that he said that most of his jobs have involved shelving and searching for books, which he thinks makes sorting pieces and picking out the exact piece come naturally.
I feel like I need to understand more about his approach to sorting. That's fascinating. Next on my list is Abby Patno.
Ooh, okay.
Abby is one of the ones who's had just a few competitions, two in the last 12 months. They were in a nationals heat where they finished fourth, and the finals where they finished 13th.
Hmm.
She was 24th in the 2022 nationals, so has been kicking around for a little while, but not a lot of visible competitions. So just kind of based on her performance at nationals last year, got her on the list.
I think you caught an urban legend that wasn't on my list, Rob.
That is my entire goal in this conversation. So 18th on my list is Emily Chandran,
Hmm.
the last member of Wicked Quick on my list. 46th at Nationals last year and 93rd at Worlds, but another one of those people whose scores have been relentlessly improving over the last, actually, for Emily since 2023. So it feels like there is a trajectory there that might manifest itself in something interesting at Nationals this year.
My 18th is Kat Dilks, someone we've talked about before in the Worlds episode, but I think she's getting faster lately.
Cool. Yeah, Kat is 27th on my list, so definitely within striking range of the top 20 and, within certain margins of error. She has done 28 events, so she's an avid competitor and definitely somebody that I always look out to see how she's doing. So
19th on my list is Yvonne Foyt,
previous guest.
previous national champion.
Yvonne I have as 25th on my list, so right there around Kat, and it looks like she's done 17 events over the course of the last year that have shown up on my radar.
And my 20 is Matt Netlow, who we've already talked about.
Okay. My 20th is a person who hasn't appeared in any in-person competitions until Carnival, and that's Tally Kleinfelter.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Tally's the first person who doesn't have a JPAR score in my list, as none of the competitions that Tally was competing in were sanctioned, and JPAR hasn't been updated to reflect the Carnival results. They were 9th in Carnival and have done 15 events, so primarily on the strength of how they've competed in virtual competitions, shows up as number 20 on my list.
Yeah, Tally was someone I reached out to dig up some puzzle origin stories.
I thought I had you with this one.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. No, Abby Patno. That's your win.
I will take it.
Tally, like Nathan, is a professional book organizer. She's an elementary school librarian. So I'm curious if she has the same experience with like having that strength in searching for specific things and sorting things efficiently. She lives in Georgia. She said she used to spend her babysitting money on Hieronym hometown collection puzzles, the Hieronym Wysocki, Charles Wysocki's
Oh, okay.
brother. And at one point, she had about 150 of them. At age 12, she did her first 3,000 piece puzzle. And she, kind of similar to Hannah Sigler, she joined Jonathan's jigsaw puzzle contest group on Facebook 2.5 years before doing a competition because she couldn't figure out how the competitions worked.
Note to Jonathan there.
Yeah. Common thread among these newcomers is that they
The kids don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, so she signed up for Southeast Regionals the night before the competition and ended up placing eighth and connecting with local puzzlers and getting sucked into the community.
It'll do that to you.
Yep.
I've got other folks that weren't in my top 20 that I thought I would just sort of mention along the way, but I want to leave space for anybody you wanted to talk about.
All right. So one person I want to talk about is Irina Shevchenko.
Uh-huh.
She placed 38th at nationals last year. She also did go to worlds last year, but at nationals last year, she won the virtual reality puzzle competition,
Oh,
which
I
was
forgot about
doing,
that.
remember that? Did you try it?
I didn't. No, but I saw it.
I tried it. I hated it. It was very frustrating. It took me like 10 minutes, and I definitely didn't want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she did a bunch of times and got her time down to 1 minute flat and won
Wow.
that. Um, she lives in San Francisco. She's lived in San Francisco for 6 years, but originally she's from Ontario, Canada, and was born in Ukraine.
Hmm.
And her last name, Shvidko, means fast in Ukrainian.
Oh,
So it's a little
nice.
luck right there.
Nominative determinism.
Another fun fact about Irina is that she told me that as a kid, she was obsessed with the Nancy Drew mystery game series, right? Yeah.
Fascinating.
I was like, you mean the
Connections.
one the Reuters worked on? And she
Yeah.
was like, what? I was so inspired by those
That's
games.
amazing.
Yeah, I know. I was really happy that I got to share that fun fact with her.
That's fun. So Irina was at Portland Jigsaw Masters last year with her partner. I think it was Rachel. I forget.
Hmm. Yep, Rachel
Uh,
Shackler.
and I think I actually at the previous nationals during pairs we were near them. They were sort of noticeably fast, but it's unfortunate that she didn't know that fact going into Portland Jigsaw Masters because the Reuters were there and they could have had
Yeah.
that conversation.
Well, there's always April 2025.
It's true.
So she said that her pairs partner, Rachel, they started just puzzling casually, regularly while watching reality TV and drinking wine, and
It's the best.
then started like joking about how they should compete in a puzzling competition because they did it so much. So
Uh-huh.
they Googled it, found out it was a thing, and then signed up for one. And it turned out to be a wooden puzzle competition,
Oh
which
no.
they weren't expecting, but they ended up taking third.
Oh, well, good for them. Yeah, that is a hard turn you have to make if you're going from regular puzzles to wooden puzzles.
But they stuck with it and now are going to nationals.
Nice.
Do you want to take a turn and talk about someone?
So a couple of former guests I just wanted to mention. We talked about Yvonne, who's
Hmm.
ranked, I think, 24th on my list, 25th on my list. And then Jessa Douglas, who is at, I think, 23rd on my list currently. So a couple former guests who are here.
One more person to talk about, another really, really cool, interesting puzzler, is Simi Berman.
Oh, Simi, yeah.
Yeah, so Simi's puzzle or speed puzzling origin story is that she was delivering a giant antenna to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, and on a whim, decided to check out the 2022 nationals
Uh-huh.
because her job was paying for her plane ticket. So she showed up knowing no one, but was able to meet people and compete in both pairs and teams.
There's just so much to unpack there.
And that antenna got launched in October 2024 on the Europa Clipper that is heading towards Jupiter's moon, Europa. And then Simi's work will kick in when it gets there and starts transmitting information 444 million miles back to Earth.
I wonder how long she's going to have to wait.
Yeah, I don't know.
That feels
It's a
like
good
got to
question.
wait a few years before that happens.
Yeah, she's already working on a new project called Dragonfly that's going to go to Saturn's moon. And the first spacecraft that Simi worked on, the Van Allen probes, which launched in 2012, is pictured on a 60-piece Ravensburger puzzle.
Oh, that's so cool.
She has a lot of thoughts about space puzzles, though.
I bet. Not a lot of accuracy in space puzzles.
Oh, she's gonna love that you said that.
I mean, it's not because I'm a space nerd, but when you look at a bunch of the same, like a bunch of planets all right next to each other, maybe accuracy isn't what we're going for.
Yeah, I was like, otherwise it would just be like really all pieces that look the same.
That's
Like,
right. Here's a star. Here's a star. Here's a star.
ooh, another fun fact about Simi is that she used to play for DC Roller Derby, and her roller derby name was Simi Simi Cocoa Puff.
Nice. So I wanted to shout out somebody from my hometown who's in the top 30 is Beatrice Endler, 28th on my list. She's a phenomenal competitor. I just learned today, though, a messy competitor potentially, but My favorite thing about her is that in every competition we've ever done, so she's in my weekly league, and they will count down from 6 before kicking off the actual competition. And as often as not, Beatrice won't be there. But before they hit 1, she is there. So she's gaining a reputation of just sort of showing up at the last minute, like you don't know that she's there, and suddenly she's competing. But she's, I think, our strongest representative on the sort of national stage.
One thing that I asked her about because I wanted to find some fun facts to surprise you with
Nice.
that you might not know. So I asked her about her hat, and she said she does not always wear a hat while puzzling, but her green baseball cap worn backwards has become a good luck charm for the bigger competitions.
If you watch her in the bigger competitions, she has her hat placing forward, and then like the countdown will begin, and she'll just flip it backwards. And I'm like, oh, she means business.
And I also loved hearing about how she met her Paris partner, Sin Pua. And I think it's because Sin's team is the Puzzle Sharks.
Hmm.
But the way that Beatrice told me about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like West Side Story.
The Sharks and the Jets.
Because, yeah, so basically, Beatrice and Sin are, like the top puzzlers on the 2 rival teams in your league, right?
Yeah.
And Beatrice said that they started texting after the competitions to compare notes and complain about the difficult puzzles.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Complaining about the competition puzzles in our league is sort of a pastime of everybody's.
I also got some fun facts about Sin. So
Hmm.
Sin is a competitive power lifter and is also a classically trained pianist and violinist who previously performed professionally.
You're busting out all kinds of facts. I did not know those things about Zin. Zin is 65th on my list, but she will show up again in the teams section. She's on an interesting team this year.
Yeah, I heard that you said messy. Beatrice called it chaos, and,
It's good to
but
it's
said
good to hear her
that
owning up to that.
she said that Sin is very organized and helps keep her in check.
Yes, they're very different. They have very different approaches. So seeing them on a pairs team will be really interesting. But I also expect good things from them.
All right. Well, I'm glad I could school you a little bit on your friends.
So speaking of people who I think are missing from the list that we should talk about, is favorite of the fans of this podcast, EB Caron, competing
Oh,
28th on my list, right up there next to Beatrice. You guys are sort of back to back on my list. Any fun facts about EB Caron?
I guess one fun fact is that I am a college professor, and this fall I taught a first year seminar called Speed Jigsaw Puzzling. And although the beginning was rocky, it turned out good. And my students won the Students' Choice Award at the first year seminar symposium in December. And I will be teaching it again next fall.
Nice. I heard somebody say just the other day, they mentioned some sort of interesting psychology fact, and they were like, "Oh, I need to tell EB that." And I was like, I need to really understand more about what it is that EB does, because we get together and we talk just about other puzzlers. At some point, you and I just need to sit down and I can hear all about what your background is.
Yeah, so I'm in the psychology department at University of Hartford, and I am a clinical psychologist specializing in child and family therapy.
Another person who's doing super interesting things. There's an interesting set of folks who do speed puzzling and who do it well. They tend to be more science, math focused, which I think is super fascinating.
I do like using puzzle data when I teach statistics. A few other people, moving on to talk about other people, which I enjoy more than talking about myself. A few other people to keep an eye on. Kelly Burr.
Hmm.
She on your list?
I am aware of Kelly. Sure. She is 34th, I think, on my list.
Yeah, I would say Kelly has a mysterious online presence, but is very friendly in person and worth meeting. This year, she's pairing with Jessa Douglas
Hmm.
and teaming with Jessa, Alice Rowe, and Hannah Scott. Another favorite that I want to talk about is the Figura family,
Mm-hmm.
better known as Florcheck.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't at last nationals, but their family team came in sixth at 2022 nationals. The team is Corey Figura, who's the mom, and three kids, Max and Sophie, who are twins, and Zeb. It looks like Max is the only family member competing in the solo event, and that Max and Sophie will be competing in pairs together. And Max and Sophie and Dan and I have a long-standing rivalry going back to 2020 and like pandemic, early speedpuzzling.com days,
Is that
back when
right?
they were high school students. Yes, they were pretty much Dan's and my like biggest competition. And so like Dan and I really wanted to beat the twins who were in high school. Like that was our goal.
Uh-huh. And were you able to do that, or did you guys trade back and forth?
Traded it back and forth a bit, but I would say we beat them more than they beat us. But we did have a recent live competition. Well, not recent, actually. So at Winter Carnival in 2024, we saw them and got to puzzle live with them, and they definitely beat us by a lot. Max also called me out for abandoning my family team, Dan, and moving on to other teams.
That's right. It's a cutthroat world.
Yeah. And one more fun fact is that Max is red green colorblind,
Oh, super interesting.
which I think, matters differently depending on the puzzle.
I would think
So
so.
I think in the like Minnesota State Championship in I want to say 2024, Max placed third behind Lauren and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And that puzzle might have been 2023 actually. I think it was 2023. That puzzle Road to Oz was
Oh yeah.
it was mostly yellow and blue,
Mm-hmm.
in fact.
Yeah. Yellow brick road and all.
Yeah.
Anybody else that you want to talk about?
Well, I have a list of people that I would like to know more about, kind of the true urban legends
Oh, all
that I
right.
just don't know very much about. Haven't been able to dig anything up on them.
Who's that?
Grayson Shannon
Oh
from
yeah.
Massachusetts
Mm-hmm.
was one of them. I've also got Kim Knobb from Nebraska,
Mm.
who just placed like ninth out of almost 300 people in their first speedpuzzling.com competition, it looked like. There are also some DC area folks, specifically the team Cherry Blossom
Yep.
Challengers, which includes Jane Stein from Maryland, who won the speedpuzzling.com Maryland State Championship and had only competed in one other virtual competition. And then the other team members of the Cherry Blossom Challengers, Eric Goulet, Jenna Wiley, Lindsay Wong. It sounded like that yesterday at a competition at the Baltimore Zoo, their team, which had like one member different, beat Kat Dilks and Gail McCormick's team.
Hmm.
So, bit of an urban legend. Rose Barrett slash Fortman, possibly different. I don't know. I've seen both last names, but I'm told it's the same person from Ohio. Rose placed third in Origins Tournament of Pieces, which is also like the Ohio State Championship,
Hmm.
ahead of some like pretty strong puzzlers, Josh Trauger and Kat Dilks. And then the last one that could be, like a future urban legend is Maria Grant from Maine.
Okay, Maria is the first one in a while that actually has a substantial number of competitions. I have
Oh,
Maria
really?
with 8
Hmm.
competitions, and they rank 81st for me.
So you said 8 competitions. I think she does not have a belt yet on
Mm-hmm.
speedpuzzling.com. And so that name has kind of stood out to me as like, oh, keep an eye on this person. I did have kind of a list of other people to see and say hi to at nationals. I wanted to highlight the newest USA JPA board members who, of course, won't be competing. They are Heather Mueller and Becca Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the continuing board members, Faith Taylor, Valerie Coit, and then Allie Krasny. And I did reach out to Allie to get an update on the puzzle fashion situation. And she said, thanks for the reminder because she has some plans but needs to execute.
Allie is being iconically puzzle fashionable every year.
Right. And so she is planning to continue upping her puzzle fashion. I also wanted to shout out some 1980s Puzzle Championship veterans who will be there. So Andrew Bradburn, who we talked about in the Worlds episode, as well as Larry Blank and Mary Cardy,
Hmm.
some other veterans. I have Emily Frost, the casual puzzler. Since Karen Cavett won't be at Nationals, I think Emily might be the biggest puzzle YouTuber there. I think Karen is just a little burnt out, especially with making the videos about these events.
Such a huge undertaking. She does such a great job, but she pours so much time into making those. I can imagine it feels like a big burden to have to feel like you got to basically create a documentary about every competition you enter.
Yeah. I saw her a couple weekends ago. Her team came in third at the Orange County Speed Puzzle Marathon.
Mm.
And she said that she is having some FOMO, so she could show up still.
She may have a Gene Reuter situation where FOMO gets the better of her and she trots out there at the last minute.
Yeah. The last person to meet at Nationals is Daphne from Ice Pack, who I get to meet at the marathon. And
Mm.
if you don't know, Ice Pack stands for the International Speed Puzzling Advisory Committee. She has a lot to say about the future of speed puzzling and how to improve as we move forward as a speed puzzling community.
Yeah, I've been following to a certain degree what the Ice Pack folks have been doing, and it's super interesting. I'm curious to see how well it takes hold in the
Mm,
community. I've seen, I think that folks on the USA JPA have already sort of acknowledged some things that have been brought up, and perhaps are I don't know if they've been doing something or not, but they definitely seem to be starting to make change happen.
mm. All right. Should we move on to pairs?
There's one last person on my
Oh,
list.
okay. Who is it?
This is a dark horse. I suspect you don't have much information about. Probably isn't on your radar for all the right reasons, and that's me. I'm competing in my first national individual competition this year. It will be my first individual, actually my second individual competition, which the first one was like 2 weeks ago. My goal, unlike folks like yourself, is to try and actually finish in the time we have available. So I am at the other end of the spectrum, but watch out for me, cheer me along if you happen to see me playing. I wouldn't mind an encouraging word or two.
I'll definitely cheer for you, Rob.
Thanks. All right. On that note, let's go to pairs. There are 390 pairs as of the end of February. 201 of them are ranked according to my scoring system. And the way I do it is I just combine the individual scores between the two pairs people. So I'm not doing anything complicated to try and figure out if you're with one person, are you better than you are with a different person? I'm just doing a straight, like, how good are you as an individual and combining those scores. Maybe something for a future exploration. I thought we would just sort of talk about the top 10. We're going to have talked about a lot of folks already, so perhaps there's not a lot to say other than just sort of running through them.
So my top pair is Kelly Walter and Andrea Peng.
I feel like that's a pretty easy choice.
Yep.
First place finishers at nationals by a ways last year. They perform great together. They're both super strong individually, and really fun to watch. I really enjoyed watching them do pairs last year in like sort of confined space where they just
Hmm.
had such great piece, like table space management in the half table that they had. Just great to watch. They're number one for me as well.
Okay. For two, I had Jean and Kathy Reuter.
Yep, another I think pretty straightforward choice. Third place finishers from nationals last year. Gene and Kathy as a pair, pretty strong.
Do you want me to go down my whole list and
Might
then
as
you're going to
well
go down your whole list? Okay. All
go
right.
down your list, and then if we skip over anybody who I don't have, then I'll mention them before we move on to the next one.
Okay. Third, I have Hannah Sigler and Mari Black.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's an interesting one because that's a new pairs partnership.
Yeah, new pair. Mari's pair last year with Emma Pan finished 7th,
Hmm.
and Hannah didn't
Yep.
compete in pairs last year. I have
Hmm.
them as 5th on my list.
They have competed together as a pair, I think, in like January or December on a like virtual puzzle competition. So they have puzzled together at least once.
All right, who you got next?
Fourth, I have Lauren Katz and Sarah Schuler.
Hmm. Famously second place from last year. I have them
Hmm.
as 4th as well.
Fifth, I have Alice Rowe and Hannah Scott.
Interesting. So I have them as 3rd.
Hmm.
What brought them to 5th for you?
Instincts? I don't know.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Last year, Hannah competed with Jessa Douglas, finished 8th. Alice competed with Erin Leedy and finished 23rd. But I think as a combined set of individuals, they're poised to do well.
Yeah. Sixth, I have Emma Pan and Min Deng, also a newer pair.
I have them at 7th, so just one position off. Min's the first person who didn't qualify as a top 20 individual to appear in this list. She was
Hmm.
34th in individuals last year, ranked 25th this year. Emma with Mari finished 7th, and Min with Lindsay Steenstra last year finished 19th.
Yeah, I think Min is someone who puzzles really well with other people.
Mm-hmm. I was talking with Jessa Douglas, who was her pair at Portland Jigsaw Masters last year, and Jessa was like, "I just get to be the puzzle princess because Min just sets everything up and like sends it across, and all I have to do is take stuff and put it together." So I could see, like, if I could see how she's a good partner in that respect.
And I know they also, so they were on the same 24-hour marathon team, and they also like reserved some days for practicing as a pair together after that. So they've practiced together recently. Seventh on my list is Tiffany Medeiros and Simi Berman.
Yep, they're 9th on my list. Last year, Tiffany was with Karen Cabot and finished 5th, and Simi was with Alyssa Zackler and finished 9th.
Solid. Uh, Eighth on my list is my nationals teammates, Allie Arundel and Andrea Heastand. They're not on your list.
They are 17th on my list.
Okay. Andrea's puzzle origin story is that she has always loved puzzles and she would puzzle by flashlight after bedtime as a kid.
So as not to get noticed.
Right. So like I don't know, like I used to read books by flashlight or like under the
Mm-hmm.
covers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but she would puzzle. Yeah. She lives in Michigan. She actually has been doing speedpuzzling.com virtual competitions for a while.
I have 30 on my list.
Yeah. Uh, but she considered nationals in 2024, but ended up being 8 months pregnant at the time. So didn't. She and Allie have been bonding and racing against each other and motivating each other with like these duels, they call them, where they repeat the same puzzle like several times during a week
Hmm.
and compare who wins each time. And it seems actually pretty neck and neck. Some other fun facts about Andrea are that she loves running and has done a marathon and a Ragnar long distance team relay. And her favorite job ever was milking a herd of over 120 dairy goats.
All right.
Next, I have Connor Delat and Josh Trauger.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10th, oh wait, no, ninth, I have Matt Netlow and Kyle Clausen. And then 10th, I have Jessa Douglas and Kelly Burr. Oh, wait, I think I gave you extra. The original numbers were right, I think.
So I have Connor and Josh at 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Kyle and Matthew Netlow at 6th. Again, based
Because
on
of Matt's
Matt's
score.
extremely strong performance over a very small number of events. I'm really interested to see how Connor and Josh net out. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. So the last pair on my list is Don Rasmussen and Andrea Kyle.
Mm,
They placed 4th last year and are ranked 21st and 22nd individually in my rankings, so I think they have a good chance
yeah,
at top 10.
strong.
Is there other folks that you want to talk about in the scope of pairs?
Let's see. Well, we haven't ever talked about Josh Trogger before.
Yeah, let's talk about Josh.
Josh has been in the speed puzzling realm virtually for a long time. I would say like back since 2020. He is a longtime groupie in Jonathan's competitions, but hadn't done too many in-person stuff. I think the first time I met him was me in person, might have been last nationals. So 2024 nationals. But related to puzzling with Connor, Josh is a dad to 3 kids who are all like under the age of 10. So
This is not new to him.
yeah, probably not too new to him.
Yeah, Josh is a another fixture on the virtual jigsaw puzzle circuit, for lack of a better word. I have 39 events for him over the course of the last year. He's 39th on my individuals list. Folks that I was going to mention who aren't in my top 10, but I think are worth noting is the hometown folks, Beatrice Endler and Zin Pua at 17th on my list. Neither of them competed last year. They're very strong individually. It's going to be exciting to watch them compete together. We talked about them sort of already. We already talked about fan favorites EB Caron and Michaela Keener. Not on my list because Michaela doesn't have a score for the last 12 months. And then just touching on a couple of previous guests, Jessa Douglas and Kelly Burr at 12th on my list. Yvonne Foyt and Tammy McLeod are at 14th on my list. And then I'm on the list. Again, not necessarily at the top. I'm partnering up with my pairs puzzler and partner in life, Rachel Shields. And we think if everything goes right, we might make it out of preliminaries this time.
Nice.
Yeah. Anything else to say about pairs?
Yeah, it could get interesting with the 500-piece puzzle. Much more of a sprint.
Much more of a sprint. Yeah.
So, favoring the sprinters.
And how do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel great about it.
Is that right? Does that favor you?
Probably. Yeah.
It is unfortunate to the degree that I like watching folks like Andrea Peng, who really sort of seem to thrive in the longer game, being able to sort of stretch their legs and run with a sort of deeper puzzle where you get to do where prep work pays off, as
Hmm.
opposed to just sort of like sprinting is really like putting things together as fast as you possibly can. So I will miss a little bit about not having that opportunity, but so be it.
Are we ready to talk about teams?
Let's talk teams.
Okay.
I have 170 teams on my list, and there are spots still open. Last we checked, so everything is sold out on the individual and pairs front, but in teams, there's still some spots left. So it will be a narrow window of time by the time this episode comes out. But if you're interested in putting together a team, that's possible that can happen. Of the teams, 72 have a rating. In order to have a rating in my system, you have to have at least 2 team members with a score. So there are a lot of teams where not everybody has a score, or even nobody has a score, or one person has a score. So the way I did this was I took everybody's individual scores and averaged them together to get a final score. And what that really is doing is trying to fill empty spots where maybe one person doesn't have a score, and I'm just taking the average of the people who do have scores. So it's a little bit of a sort of fast and loose approach to things, but at least it gets some folks to talk about.
All right.
Do you want to kick us off with top 10 teams?
Yeah. The top choice was very clear. Jack Be Quick.
Yep.
I saw Andrea explained the meaning behind or the origin of their team name, but the puzzlers on the team are all in order of letters. Jean Reuter, J, Andrea Pang, A, Kathy Reuter, C, and Kelly Walter, K. So that's the Jack and Jack Be Quick.
Love that.
And of note, this is 3 of the world championship winning team.
Yeah.
Subbing Becca Taylor or subbing Kelly Walter for Becca Taylor.
Right. And Becca Taylor is a strong player, but Kelly Walter is a stronger player. So taking the world's best team.
In your numbers, maybe, Rob.
Listen,
I don't know.
Becca knows that she's number one in my heart, but it is definitely the case that Kelly is a stronger individuals competitor. And so I think that, if you're just to look at swapping an individual's performance with another individual's performance, understanding that it doesn't always work that way, team dynamics definitely matter. This is definitely
Thanks for listening to
taking a
Peace
strong
Talks.
team.
You can
and
follow
making
the
it
podcast
stronger.
on Instagram at peace_talks. And you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.
A given day on the right puzzle.
Sure. It's always a combination of the puzzle person and the time.
Becca's getting really fast.
Yeah. Again, no knocks on Becca at all. I like that you feel like you need to defend her, though.
Well, she definitely underperformed in the world's solo final.
Mhm.
But in the recent speedpuzzling.com competition, she's usually in the top 3.
Becca, you've been well defended. Evie will not have it. I was going to say pretty much the same thing. This is the number 1 team, Busy Birdies, from last year at Worlds. They're individually ranked 2nd, 4th, 7th, and 8th. And their pairs with Kelly and Andrea being 1st on my ranking and Kathy and Jean being 3rd on my ranking. It's a pretty strong team. Who do you have at number 2?
I have 3.5 Men at number 2.
Me
You
too.
do also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
All right. So 3.5 Men. I'm guessing that Connor is the half man on the team. Young 11-year-old Connor.
Mhm.
And the other team members are Josh Trugger, Matt Netlow, and Kyle Cosson. It'll be interesting. We've talked about all of them now, but it'll be interesting to see their dynamic as a team and if they live up to their expected performance based on their individual potential.
Yeah, I think that is well put. The teams that I have in 2nd through 5th place are all essentially tied in terms of their overall score. The window is pretty narrow, but 3.5 Men make it on the strength of some performances that are unclear whether they will materialize in the actual competition. So Matt and Connor both, I think, strong competitors, as we've talked about. It will be interesting to see how they do in a sort of team competition altogether.
3rd, I have We Put the Betch in You Betcha.
All right.
The Betches.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Schuler, Lauren Kotz, Don Rasmussen, and Andrea Kyle.
Yep. I have them as 4th on my list. They were last year's 2nd place team, famously.
Mm-hmm.
Above them, though, I have Wicked Quick.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I had Wicked Quick 5th. And for 4th, I had the Jiggernauts, or just Jiggernauts,
Yeah.
Alice Rowe, Jessa Douglas, Hannah Scott, Kelly Burr.
Right. And so you can see that I said that the 2nd through 5th places were pretty much tied as far as I'm concerned. We have the exact same teams, you and I, just in different orders in that. And I think they're all equally valid ways of thinking about it.
Yeah, we'll have to agree on our scoring criteria. I feel like, we could do 3 points for exact placement, maybe 2 points for within 1 to 2 rankings, and then 1 for having them in the top 10 or top 20.
So I will just say for those of you who are listening along at home that when we first started talking about doing this episode, EB was like, a lot of these people are my friends. I want to talk good things. I was like, great. We don't have to put them in competition against each other. We don't have to put them in brackets. We can just say, hey, here's some fun people we think are great and you should pay attention to. And then as time goes on, EB's like, that's true, but I also want to beat you. So you can see that EB's competitive side, which drives no doubt her exceptional skills on the jigsaw puzzling front, are rearing their heads in terms of how to treat this conversation.
I think it's going to be a lot closer this time. I really didn't put a whole lot of thought or effort into this.
Dang.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it at all until this morning. Then I would say like maybe half an hour on it. I put a lot more effort into reaching out to puzzlers
Yeah.
and learning about them, which
Right.
was more fun. But beating you would definitely be fun. However, if you beat me, then we'd be 1-1 and it would be more exciting next time.
All right. Well, we'll need to figure out a scoring system then, or
Okay.
agree on one. And maybe if we decide to go that route, maybe I'll do the same thing that I did before and put scoring sheets out so folks can do their own version of that and follow along.
We mentioned Wicked Quick. One impressive fact about them on the USA JPA Speedrun Challenge, the Cobble Hill Rainbow Cats, they have a time of like 7 minutes and 30 seconds for a
Wow.
team of 4 for a 500-piece puzzle.
I feel like you have to, like, it'd be interesting to hear how they approach it. I feel like you have to have well-defined zones. Like, does everybody just do a quadrant?
Yeah.
Because at that point, it almost feels like the hardest part is getting out of each other's way.
Yeah, I would love to like have them do it at nationals so that
Yes.
we could
Oh,
watch,
what a great
right?
idea.
Only like 7.5 minutes of their life. Or,
That's like, let's round up to 10 with some preparation and like getting ready. All right, Wicked Quick. We're looking for an exhibition from you guys.
Yeah, exhibition. 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
So somebody from Wicked Quick, bring the puzzle and show us how it's done, because that seems like it would be amazing to watch. All right, who do you have at 6th?
I have Flip Sort Cry with Gray Rogers, Kat Dilks, Tiffany Medeiros, and Simi Berman.
And we haven't talked about Gray yet. Gray's 54th on my list, finished 51st last year, hasn't really competed a bunch this year. So unclear as to sort of where her score takes her. Cat and Gray's teams, Jigsaw Junkies with Jeffrey Scott and Josh Traeger finished 7th. Tiffany and Simi's team last year, the Dark Horse Puzzlers with Alyssa Zackler and Gail McCormick, finished 8th. So it seems like a good lineup, but I'm hoping you have some idea of what their team name means.
I asked Tiffany about it, and she said there wasn't a good story. She just thinks that Kat came up with it.
Is that right? It was the most compelling name. I was like, that is the one out of all of these that I really want to know the backstory of. But that is who I have as 6th as well.
Oh, all right.
What about 7th?
7th, I have Oddbirds.
Oh.
Elizabeth McElveen, Jasper Lee, Min Deng, and Jamie Mbabo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Oddbirds are 12th on my list, so they didn't quite make the top 10. But a great combination of folks.
Who's 7th on your list?
So weirdly on my list is a team name I don't fully understand. Maybe you've got the background on it, but my place for 7th is a team called TBD.
Oh, yeah.
Which
that's my team.
Has, among other people, EB Caron on it. So you want to tell us a little bit about that team and what is up with your name?
Yeah, I think we're going with the puzzle ostriches now. Okay. As in, we're all burying our heads in puzzle pieces.
Okay, cool. I think that we've talked about all the folks on that team. Where did you put your team on your list?
I
didn't include them.
Yeah,
that's right.
It felt weird.
All right, well, I will do it for you. I have your team at 7th.
Okay. 8th, I had Pieces of Cake with Gail McCormick, Mahad Diaz, Megan Jones, and Mindy Whiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a bunch of folks we haven't talked about. I also had them at 8. Gail finished 32nd in individuals last year and comes in ranked 33rd in individuals and was on the Dark Horse Puzzlers with Tiffany and Simi last year. Maud comes in 67th and has primarily been a virtual puzzler and did not compete in last year's nationals. Melinda comes in at 36th and Megan comes in at 56th. They're both on the Utakan Puzzles team last year with Kyle Kassen and Nastya Alexieva finishing 9th last year.
9th, I have War and Peace with Yvonne Foyt, Alyssa Zackler, Lindsay Steenstra, and Tammy McLeod.
Yeah, I have them as 13th on my list. Instead, I have at 9th Pocketful of Pieces with Aloysia Larson, Emmy Lee, Liz Nelson, and Joshua Nelson.
Nice.
They were 13th last year.
I met the Nelsons at Winter Carnival 2 years ago. They are siblings. And I think Liz got Josh into speed puzzling. She was in it first.
Nice.
So for 10th, I have the Cherry Blossom Challengers, that local DC team that we talked about.
Right. Yeah, they are 17th on my list, in part because they have a couple of players who don't have scores. They're the first team actually on my list that has 2 people without scores.
Who's 10th on your list?
10th on my list is the Blue Dust Bunnies. This is Karen Nee, Carmen Duenas, Trisha Sedlecki, and Zin Pua. Karen and Trisha were on Team Connect 4 last year, taking 20th. It looks like this is Carmen's first appearance at Nationals, but she's coming in ranked 35th overall. Zin, hometown competitor from Portland, Oregon, comes in ranked 64th. Zin found her way onto this team. They were looking for an extra person through Tiffany Medeiros. And apparently the name Blue Dust Bunnies is something that Karen Nee suggested and is meant to celebrate the wonderful blue dust Ravensburger puzzles make.
Cute name.
Yeah.
And a strong team.
Yeah.
They caught my eye as well.
So other notables that didn't hit my top 10 were hometowners, the Puzzle Sharks, who are at 18th, with JD Armstrong, Davey Black, Maggie Kirkland, and Marissa Martin. They are a very strong team in our local puzzling league, but also another Portland strong team who I currently have at 19th, so right there next to the Puzzle Sharks, is Beam, which is Beatrice Endler, Aaron Fisk, Alicia Gould, and Mary Powell. So they are another, like the other very strong team in our Portland leagues. This team is usually called Blem, but they've replaced Larissa with Alicia because Larissa is many months pregnant. It used to be that Mary Powell, in the very early days of our local league, would just show up on her own. There'd be like teams, like a few teams. There were probably like, I don't know, 5 or 6 teams total. But she would show up on her own and just sort of aggregate anybody who walks in the door as to part of her team. And often she would be like, things would start, other people would walk in. So she would start on her own and she would sort of develop a team over the course of finishing the puzzle. But then one day, I think it was like Beatrice and Aaron and maybe Larissa all together just showed up at the same time, and they ended up at the same, all as part of Mary's team. Like they were really great together and became the powerhouse that they are. But the Puzzle Sharks and Beam are pretty much tied. So I'm looking for a local slugfest here.
Those rivals.
That's right. Last on my list is my team. My team is Advil Up. We're ranked 50th.
Hey.
Advil Up because we are always having to take Advil before we go into our competitions. And that'll be me, Rachel Shields, and then mother-daughter pair, Rose and Leah Robbins from the Portland League. Rose also being an exceptional puzzler. So we're really all just sort of stacking on the back of Rose. And that's how we become ranked as high as we even are.
I thought there were some really great team names that I wanted to just like shout out. Like,
let's do it.
Good job. Much better than TBD. All right. So Edge of Glory. Puzzle Goblins. Los Ravens Burritos.
Yes, I did enjoy that one.
Edgehogs. Jiggy Stardust.
I didn't see that one.
And there are 2. One I think is definitely a Goonies reference because like several of the Goonies actors are going to be at this awesome con. So the Fratellis. And then this one, I'm not sure. I like it either way, but it could be a Goonies reference. It might not be a Goonies reference. Sloths just want to have fun.
Could go either way for sure. A couple of team names that I enjoyed was So Much Flippin' Work, Tally Kleinfelder's team, in part because my regular team is flipping pieces, so I appreciate the sort of familyness of it. But also it expresses a similar sentiment as to my team's name. And then I just noticed in the list, Ohio is for solvers, which is great because it's like the Ohio is for lovers, but is anagrammed. So I love that. It's not
Oh,
quite anagrammed, but it's close. Like it's got one
yeah, it
extra S in it,
is.
but it's pretty
Oh,
great.
yeah.
So kudos to people for coming up with great names. One of the first things that when we went to nationals for the very first time that stood out was the fun names that people came up with, and so I always enjoy that part of the competition. And shirts, love people's shirts. All right, so that takes us to the end.
We did it.
We did it. Yes, we slogged through. We got through all of the folks that we wanted to talk about. You're going to be at nationals, obviously. Are you doing any prep for nationals?
Actually, I will be going to visit Michaela in Kentucky
Oh, neat.
next week during my actually we both have spring break the same week, so gonna do a little pairs practice and also some walking to maintain the 10,000 step streak.
Right. I'll be there at nationals as well, as I mentioned. There's some chance that I might show up on the live stream. So just a reminder, you can watch the live stream on YouTube or Twitch. Even if I'm not on it, it's probably still worth watching. If you see or hear me, come up and say hi. I had a number of people at St. Paul say, I recognize your voice and say hi, which I love. So say hi to me.
Aw.
I imagine EB would love to say hi to you. Probably she's going to find you before you find her. So, but if she misses out on you for whatever reason, swing by and say hi. I'm going to bring, I think, a small number of Peace Talk shirts. So if you say hi to me and you can show me that you were following Peace Talks before nationals, I may have one to give you depending on how supplies last. You were recently on the 2 Puzzling Unicorns.
Yeah, it was fun. We talked about the puzzle marathon. I just feel like I keep talking about the marathon. It was great. Can I talk more about the marathon? I loved it so
we're
much.
out of time. I got to go.
Well, yeah, I guess you can listen to that 2 Puzzle Unicorns episode to hear more about the marathon, rather than repeating myself here. And also see Yvonne's and my 99 piece puzzle plank battle.
Oh yeah, I've not seen that, but I saw something about it, so I need to go check that out. EB, thank you again for bringing your wealth of information to this podcast. I just enjoy how much that you get in and you learn all about who's got what going on. Remind folks where they can find more of you.
You can find me on Instagram at Puzzle Free or Die.
I will see you at nationals.
Yeah, see you, Rob.